all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once, and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.
Hello and welcome to History for Weirdos.
We're your hosts, Andrew
and Stephanie.
And each week, we're going to take you on a journey into the strange, obscure, and relentlessly entertaining corners of human history.
Now listen up, friends, because it's about to get weird.
Weirdos, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 51 of the History for Weirdos podcast.
It's good to be back, weirdos.
It is so good to be back. I mean, we've taken about a month off now.
Yeah, we did like a summer break.
Exactly, and we went to Rome, which I'm sure we will talk about in a little bit.
Yes.
And guys, it was so amazing. If you haven't been, highly suggest it. It was my first time, Stephanie's second time there, and I'm in love, and I want to move there tomorrow.
Oh yeah, it was gorgeous. I'd say our big takeaway from our trip to Rome, which we did share a bit about on Instagram, so if you don't follow us on Instagram, you can see pictures and reels and stuff at History for Weirdos. But my biggest takeaway was to maybe not go to Rome in July, though.
Yeah, that was, I think, the biggest negative. Also,
it was so hot.
Also strikes.
Oh, there were a lot of strikes. I think that's year-round, though. I don't think that's seasonal.
Year-round. It's definitely not seasonal. I think that's just in general. But yeah, it's really expensive in July.
Right, because it's the high season. It's summer vacation, right? So lots of families from all over Europe. It sounded like there were a lot of Europeans, and there were a lot of Americans like us there as well.
And it's just the hottest.
It's so hot.
Yeah, like every single day, guys, it was like, at least 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a little weenie in the heat, so that was rough on me for sure. But it was still like so gorgeous and such a like privilege to be able to go and see those things. We definitely want to go back, and we'll probably go back in like spring or fall next time.
That would be my recommendation. Go in the spring or fall.
Yeah, if anyone's looking to go, if you're planning a trip, we recommend spring or fall because there's so much to see. Like, it's very walkable. You can walk everywhere, and there's so much to see that you don't want to be overheated or too cold while you're walking. So
exactly.
Those are our big takeaways.
Yeah.
And then this week, my story or my episode, I guess, is inspired by something we saw in Rome, or someone's work that we saw in Rome.
Yes.
And I will be talking to us all, talking to myself mostly, about the very famous, infamous painter, sometimes Caravaggio.
And he is your favorite painter, I believe.
No.
He's not your favorite? I messed that up. I didn't know. I thought he was.
He's probably number 2. My favorite is
Da Vinci.
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh. Okay, that was... I would have gotten there. I would have gotten there in the next, 30 seconds. I think.
That's so definitely embarrassing that you didn't know that.
It is a little embarrassing.
I'm pretty basic, and it's Van Gogh.
Yeah, I know who your favorite sculptor is.
Yeah.
I mean...
I don't really have a second or third favorite.
I mean, neither. It's both.
It's Bernini.
Bernini, guys, yeah.
Which we also saw a ton of Bernini's work in Rome. Obviously, he was popping there for a while. And gorgeous,
Gorgy.
The most incredible things we've ever seen.
Yeah.
But I do like art history, I guess, a little bit. And I'd say my favorite is Van Gogh. And then my second favorite is Caravaggio.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe in third, I feel like a terrible feminist that she's third, but third is Frida Kahlo. But it's just in terms of, you know what? I like the disturbed ones.
Yeah.
That's my vibe.
Oh, I think you would have liked El Greco.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Was he hurting
He's
inside?
the one who painted the really disturbing Saturn eating his children.
Wow. I want to look that up.
I guess it would be in the Greek version.
We'll get back. You think about that.
Yeah.
You let us know if it comes back to you. But in the meantime, I'll tell us about our boy Caravaggio. For those who may not know, he was an Italian painter that was primarily active in Rome in the late 16th, early 17th centuries, and he was one of the early contributors to the Baroque style movement. So even in his lifetime, which I think is really interesting, he was known for being a talented, rebellious, and controversial figure.
Ooh, I like him.
Though through his art and his personal escapades, he was the ultimate embodiment of work hard, play hard. And he was kind of a bad boy artist.
Oh, hell yeah.
So in today's episode, I'm going to share a brief history of his creative achievements and his criminal activity.
That's incredible. That sentence alone is amazing. Artistic achievement, criminal activity.
Yes.
Boom.
He's so interesting. I didn't know anything about him, and I'll get into it when I fell in love with his work. But my gosh, he's an interesting fellow. So let's start at the beginning, because that's what makes sense.
Fair enough.
His actual name was Michelangelo.
Oh my god. Yes, okay, I did know that.
Yeah, but
That's so unfortunate.
that one's kind of taken. So he was Michelangelo Merisi, and he was born in Milan on September 29th, 1571, they think.
Okay.
And in Milan, his father was a household administrator, an architect decorator. No idea what that means. To the Marchese of Caravaggio.
Oh.
A town that is 35 kilometers to the east of Milan. So his artistic name that we love and know him by, Caravaggio, is actually the town where he grew up. You'll see they moved there where his dad worked. Not anything to do with his actual name.
That's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and again, I don't know what it means to be a household administrator and architect director, but it sounds like his dad, did a lot of stuff.
Yeah, weirdos, if you know what that means, let us know.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, in 1576, after the family moved to Caravaggio to escape a plague that was ravaging Milan at the time, Caravaggio's father and grandfather both contracted the plague and died on the same day.
Oh my god, his father and his grandfather?
Yeah.
God, that sucks.
Yes, terrible, terrible. Caravaggio's mom was left to raise 5 children alone, living in poverty, right? No more men in the house. It's assumed that they stayed in Caravaggio during this time until she dies in 1584. So the same year that his mom dies, Caravaggio's like, I'm going to go out on my own, and he began a 4-year apprenticeship with the painter Simone Petrezano. He was from Milan.
Okay.
So this is when he starts to study. So it would be 1588. He starts to study painting.
How old would he have been at this point?
So he was born in 1571.
So about 17 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's so hard at that point to have no one.
Wow. So his father, grandfather, and mother all died relatively quickly in his life. God, that sucks.
Yeah, and he was pretty young. And I couldn't find much about his siblings because he was one of 5. So I don't know what happened in that area. I'm hoping they lived full, beautiful lives and they all stayed in touch. That's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Knock on wood, that's what happened.
Yeah.
So let's go to his time in Rome next, because this is where Caravaggio made a name for himself. This is where he thrived off art and scandal. Okay?
Yes. This is what I'm looking forward to.
So in 1592, Caravaggio left Milan for Rome in a flight after certain quarrels where he wounded a police officer.
Starting off strong here.
Yeah, so he was like, I wanted to go to Rome anyway. So he just heads to Rome when he's no longer able to stay in Milan.
Okay.
He arrives without any money or means, but he's very eager to make it as an artist. And it's important to note for historical context that at this time in Rome, there was a big demand for talented artists. So it makes sense that he wanted to go there anyway.
Right.
They wanted to fill the churches and the palazzi that were being built everywhere. And the church and its patrons, noble patrons, were looking for a new style of religious art to capture people, to counter the rising threat of Protestantism. So cue bad boy Caravaggio.
Yeah.
Because, Protestantism is more austere in terms of their churches, right?
Right.
And so they were like, you know what we'll do to fight the Protestants? We'll make it more bougie.
Even more grandiose.
We'll make it, even though that's their whole qualm with us.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing.
Yes. And then Caravaggio is an up-and-coming artist. So in 1595, an eminent cardinal named Francesco del Monte recognized Caravaggio's talents and took him into his household to be his patron, essentially, which was really common. Everyone wanted to discover, all the rich people wanted to discover like a cool artist.
Like, this is the next big thing.
Yeah, I'm his patron. I'm going to make him a big name, right?
Yeah.
So through the cardinal's circle of acquaintance, Caravaggio received his first commissions, which were so well received immediately that he went from starving artist to celebrity almost immediately.
Oh my God. So he was an OG influencer.
He was an influencer in the wilds of Rome.
I love that.
And he had quite a reputation to go with it. So while enjoying his rise to fame in Rome, he was also brought to trial 11 times.
Okay. I love this. I love this image already.
Some of the charges included, some of them are weak, like swearing at a constable.
Oh,
And then the next one is penning satirical verses about a rival painter.
Seriously?
But apparently the satirical verses one, like I was reading a little bit about it, like put into context, it was like mean tweets, like slander mean tweets, basically. Like it was apparently so vicious that like it ruined the guy's reputation.
Oh my God.
It like caused like emotional damages.
Oh my God.
So that's why he was taken to court for it.
It's amazing. He
was also charged with slashing the cloak of an adversary as he walked by, and, quote, abusing the police was a charge he regularly got. And then one of the famous charges he went to trial for was chucking a plate of artichokes at a waiter.
As one does. I don't... See, that's my least favorite one. You can mess with your adversaries and police, but don't mess with, like, the hardworking, like, wait staff, you know?
Poor waiter.
Yeah, like,
Just
that's messed up.
got a bunch of artichokes thrown at him.
God, yeah. Not cool.
According to one of his biographers, this is in quotes, after a fortnight's work, he would swagger, or no, this is a contemporary, so it's actually in the present. After a fortnight's work, he will swagger about for a month or two with his sword at his side and with a servant following him, from one ball court to the next, ever ready to engage in a fight or argument, with the result that it is most awkward to get along with him. The sword was illegal at this time. You needed to have a license to carry arms.
Yeah.
And he just didn't. And he was like, I'm going to carry a sword anyway.
He's
and
like, I don't give a fuck.
When they say from one ball court to another, him swaggering about, they mean tennis.
Wow.
That's where he was causing a ruckus on the tennis courts.
Wow, what a bad boy.
I know.
It's funny because I was literally in my mind picturing like basketball
like
courts.
A basketball court.
Yeah, and I was like, basketball definitely was not around at this point.
No. And when he wasn't painting, and apparently he could paint really fast, like people were really impressed with, like, he would just lock himself away for a few days and paint a masterpiece.
So he was a natural. I mean, we literally saw some of his work like in person, and it's, guys, if you haven't, like, it's beyond beautiful.
It's so beautiful. Anything that was commissioned, he'd get it done really quick so he could go back to partying.
Wow.
And so,
I like that. I respect that.
Yeah. He was often rubbing elbows with the elite of Rome, which included, like, of course, high-ranking Catholic officials and noble families. But this didn't stop him from also being linked to, gangsters of the time and being romantically linked to one of the most famous sex workers in Rome. I'm not going to say her name right. Filedi Melandroni.
Nice.
Yeah, okay, I got that right. I was like rethinking it. So I'll tell you a little bit about her because she does play quite a pivotal role in his life.
Okay.
So Melandroni was originally from Siena, but she moved to Rome and she became a sex worker at the age of 16. She was extremely well known and sought after. Very famous.
Did it say why? Is it just beautiful?
I think she was beautiful, yeah.
Okay.
You can see her in his paintings.
Oh.
Caravaggio met her when he was commissioned to paint her in the painting called Portrait of a Courtesan for an Italian nobleman named Vincenzo, can't say it,
Something Italian.
Vincenzo, something that probably sounds beautiful. And he was a bougie banker.
Yeah.
And he was sleeping with this sex worker. And that's how Caravaggio met her. And what's really interesting, and I think I'll touch on her more later if I remember correctly, but just something that I personally have noticed is Caravaggio doesn't typically portray female subjects in a very erotic or sexual way, which was weird, right? Male artists really portray the female figure or female subjects in a very, at the very least, like in the most mild, in a sensual way.
Right.
And he doesn't do this with women, but he does do this with men. And I just find that really interesting. Historians do argue over his sexuality, but the general consensus is that in today's perspective, we would consider him queer or bisexual.
Okay.
So it's believed he had relationships with both men and women. So I'm going to get into his art a little bit more because there are many elements of Caravaggio's art that made it really revolutionary and rebellious in and of itself. Obviously, we look at it now and we think it's very classically beautiful.
Yeah.
But it was not mainstream at the time.
Oh, so he had some like subversive elements, at least for like the contemporary.
Exactly. So much of the information that I'm sharing about this portion, because I'm not an art historian, comes from things that I read by Letizia Treves, the curator of the Caravaggio exhibit in the National Gallery in London.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she had like a really cool article on the National Gallery website, kind of like diving deep into his style. So the two main standout elements that I'll be breaking down a little bit is like his use of real life models and his use of dramatic lighting and shadows. So regarding real life models, that doesn't sound too crazy, right? Like artists had used models before. That's really typical. But typically they used actual models, like someone who was a model for a painter, or at least people prepared that were to sit for portraits, like nobility. So people that, you imagine someone, you know, you're going to get a photo taken, you like get groomed all nice, you put on your best, and you sit for a painting.
Right.
But Caravaggio famously would just stop people in the street and he would pull them into his studio and paint them.
That's kind of amazing.
Yes.
So eccentric.
Yes, very eccentric. This resulted in the subjects of his paintings having a real life quality to them that was striking for the time, because he wouldn't edit things that other artists deemed as like imperfect. Like if they had dirt on their hands because they were an everyday person working, he'd leave the dirt on their hands.
Yeah.
Or if they had like a funky birthmark, he'd leave the birthmark on there. He wouldn't try to manicure them.
Right. We saw that and you pointed that out when we
I'll
saw...
get to it later.
Okay.
Yeah. He represented essentially the real people that he saw.
Nice.
And as I just mentioned her name, he famously used Filedi Melandroni as one of his models in multiple paintings, this very well-known sex worker. And while they did develop a romantic relationship, she was also known to like, quote unquote, be involved with this guy named Ranuccio Tomassoni, who was likely her pimp, not really her boyfriend.
Right.
And he was a gangster from a really wealthy family. So Caravaggio, and that's important, it'll come back later.
Okay. What was his name?
Ranuccio Tomassoni.
Ranuccio Tomassoni. Okay.
I'm sure we both said that perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. Especially for our Italian listeners.
Yes.
You're welcome.
So Caravaggio used her in a model for multiple paintings in addition to that one portrait he did.
Right.
He used her as a model for Martha and the Mary Magdalene, if anyone wants to look these up so you could see what she looks like, in which she is portraying Mary Magdalene. And then in Judith beheading Holofernes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's one's really famous. And as Saint Catherine of Alexandria.
Ooh,
yes.
That's very subversive.
Very subversive. She's in one painting of her, she looks like she has brown hair. But in all the others, she has like strawberry blonde hair. And she's really cute. She's really pretty. And here's a great quote about the real life elements of his work from that article that I told you about. So I'm just going to read it to you. It's a little chunk, but I thought it was a very good summation. So Caravaggio's technique was as spontaneous as his temper. He painted straight onto the canvas with minimal preparation. Sometimes he abandoned a disappointing composition and painted a new work over the top. Much to the horror of his critics, he used ordinary working people with irregular, rough, and characterful faces as models for his saints, and showed them in recognizably contemporary surroundings. People hated it. Yeah. But they loved it. They loved to hate it, essentially.
The only thing I don't like is the historical inaccuracy. But as we do a history podcast, that I think goes without saying.
Yes, I actually don't get into it further, so I'm glad you brought that up, because they just touch on it a little bit here. He will paint biblical scenes in modern day settings, right? And in modern day clothing. Mm-hmm. So it is the saints in a 16th century like house with 16th, 17th century clothing.
Right.
Not in their biblical era stuff, which I think it's kind of cool that he does that.
I guess so, yeah. It's just maybe for us, it's like weird. But for them, it would be like obvious. Like, of course. It's
right.
Yeah, okay. I kind of retract my statement then a little bit.
I see what you're saying. At the time, they're like, oh, this is obviously meant to be like, send some sort of message.
Right.
Whereas for us, from the future, we're like, wait, they didn't dress like that, did they?
Yeah, it's like, hey, wait a minute. That's way off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
The second element, as I mentioned, is his use of dramatic lighting. So he's really famous for his use of shadows. If you look at any Caravaggio painting, it's often really dark and full of shadow, even though, like I said, he's often depicting very famous biblical scenes and characters, which we normally would associate with light.
Yeah, and they've been doing that for like 1,000 years.
Yeah, even the little halos,
right? Yeah.
That everyone's used to seeing around the saints. He sort of enveloped them in shadow, which I think is really cool, because he famously would not have people pose for him in the daylight. He'd have people come when it was dark, and then he would manipulate light, I'm assuming via candles, in his studio if he wanted to create a certain effect or texture.
That's
genius.
Amazing. It's genius, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and you like we saw in the Villa Borghese, like paintings that were just from before this time, and they didn't really utilize like shadow, like
depth.
Yeah, like at all. And then he comes in and it's like, wow. Like, guys, there's a very like stark difference in like 50 years. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, you're right. It feels like some of the other paintings from just before his time that we saw are a little flat.
Yeah.
In comparison. Not that they're like, I couldn't paint that way, so I'm not criticizing the person's skill. Yeah. I could never do that. But he really makes it more lifelike. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to go deep into one painting that illustrates all of these really distinct elements. And it's the one you were going to reference.
Yes.
It's the Madonna di Loreto, which we saw in the Cavaletti Chapel at the Church of Sant Agostino in Rome. So for folks listening who have not seen it, I highly recommend you like Google it, you check it out. I'll try to post a picture of it on Instagram as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to bore you all with like explaining too much what's happening. But basically the picture shows the Virgin Mary carrying baby Jesus while two peasants are kneeling before them. She's like in front of the door and they're on her doorstep. So immediately, let me know if you agree, I feel like the first thing you notice, especially because that church is full of paintings of the Virgin Mary and a baby, or baby Jesus, I guess, not just a random baby, is the use of intense shadow.
Yeah, it's really dark painting.
It's dark. You have to like really focus to see what's going on. You actually can't really make out baby Jesus's face. He's kind of shadowed.
Yeah, he's obscure. He's obscured in it. He's not the focal point at all.
He's not the focal point. I agree. This painting was controversial for several reasons.
My boy being controversial.
Such a bad boy.
He's a bad boy of art, of like early 17th century art, late 16th century.
Yes.
There we go.
It was against Paleotti's rule, which is some old Catholic law that I don't really know about, to depict saints as engaging in ordinary activities or like they are normal people. Okay?
It's like did you not realize that they were normal people?
This is why Protestantism was rising.
Yeah.
It's not because your art wasn't cool enough.
Yeah.
It's because of stuff like this. So upon seeing this painting, some perceived that Caravaggio was depicting the Madonna, the Virgin Mary. And yes, we always call her the Virgin Mary. I did ask this in Catholic school. I got in trouble. But the answer is yes, she's always the Virgin Mary. Depicting Madonna holding baby Jesus outside the door. They said that she looked like just an ordinary housewife. And that was against this law. Because she looked plain and she's not adorned in anything.
Right,
she looks like a mom.
A halo, I don't think.
I don't think she does either. She looks like a mom carrying a big baby.
Right.
The baby's really fat, in case anyone was wondering.
Baby Jesus was thick.
Yeah, it was a thick baby. And then when you walk up to the painting, one of the first things you see are the bare feet of those peasants that are kneeling. And for me, the perspective is almost like you're at the peasants' level and their feet are the closest thing to you, so it's bigger in perspective, right? And so there's these big, dirty feet sticking out almost of the painting. And the noble class was super offended by this reminder that people lived in rampant poverty.
Oh my God.
They were like, we don't want that in this church. They didn't want to have to look at it. They were really offended that he showed their dirty feet, but he showed people as they were. Lastly, the controversial thing about this painting is that many elite dudes recognized that Caravaggio had used a woman named Lina Antognetti, who was also a well-known sex worker, as the Virgin Mary.
Oh my God. Talk about subversive.
Very subversive. And then fun fact, on a personal level, this is the first Caravaggio painting I ever saw in person, and that was 9 years ago. My professor explained these elements to us, and I immediately fell in love with the work without knowing anything else about the guy. I just loved how rebellious and raw he came across, even to like a 20-year-old in the modern times, you know, like I got it. I really connected with it. And then you and I, of course, got to see it together.
Yeah, this month.
Mm-hmm. So it was his controversial methods that outraged people, but it's also what made him famous and rich.
Right. So that's a good lesson.
What's the lesson, babe?
Get people mad and then make money.
Get people mad, make
money. Profit.
There you go.
There you go. You heard it here. You heard it here first, folks.
Life lessons from History for Weirdos.
Yeah.
So he always got away with these shenanigans, likely because he had some really well-connected patrons behind him.
Life lesson number 2. Have really wealthy patrons behind you.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's life lesson number 1, actually.
Yeah.
And then you can make people mad. So the protection worked, right? He was able to do kind of whatever he wanted, whether that was like slashing someone's cape or using sex workers as the Virgin Mary.
Oh my God.
He was able to get away with stuff. And
this guy's such a champ.
yeah, until he didn't.
Oh no.
Yes.
Oh no.
So Caravaggio's problems post-fame began on the 29th of May in 1606. That can't be right. Is that the right date? No. Is it?
I don't know.
Why? Why do I have dyscalculia? Maybe
I mean,
it's
it
the
would
right
be.
date.
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one heard that. Pretend like I didn't say that, you guys. So anyway, at some point,
We don't know if we don't know if the year is right, I guess.
I think so.
So May 29th in the early 1600s.
Yeah, I think that's correct though.
Okay.
When he kills Ranuccio Tommasoni,
Oh no, that pimp.
the pimp, he kills the pimp in a duel.
Oh my God. And guys, not like in a 50 Cent kind of way, but like in a literal pimp.
Yeah, in a not cool way.
In a not cool way.
They fought in a duel at the Campo Marzio. The Campus
Oh my
Martius.
God, the Campus Martius. Mm-hmm. It's ancient Rome, guys. It all goes back to ancient Rome. It all goes back to ancient Rome.
Anyway, the two had argued many times. They'd gotten into brawls before. So people weren't sure exactly what they were fighting over this time. But they do think that the killing part was unintentional. So but like, if there's a good chance you're gonna kill someone.
Like you're in a duel, like,
Yeah.
like one of those like shooting duels with the pistols.
No, swords.
Oh, swords. Oh, okay.
He castrated him.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound unintentional.
So the fact that he castrated him makes some people believe that the duel had to do with Sienna, the sex worker they were both involved with, in a way.
Right.
Some people think it was as simple as like Caravaggio owed him gambling money and he didn't want to pay it. And then he castrated him and then the guy died.
Right.
Not chill, right?
I'd say that's pretty unchill on the scale from like 0 to chill. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Tomassoni's wealthy family were outraged and demanded justice. And this time Caravaggio's patrons were unable to shield him from any repercussions. So Caravaggio flees Rome, a murderer and a wanted man.
Oof.
He moves to Naples, to Malta, to Sicily, goes back to Naples.
Oh my gosh.
Seeking solutions that can grant him a papal pardon because, right, the Pope is the law at this point.
Right.
So that he can return to Rome. And he almost gets it multiple times, even with because his talent and fame, right? People are like, oh my God, you're the Caravaggio. Like,
yes.
Yeah, I'll help you out. But then every single time, he ends up getting in a fight and gets arrested or hurt somebody.
Homie.
Yeah. And he sabotages his own efforts to get back.
You know what? He needed to talk to you, like a therapist, and be like, hey, like, you can ask him, like, hey, homie, like, why are you self-sabotaging?
He definitely shows a lot of emotional dysregulation. Very quick to temper. There's a lot of stuff he could have been dealing with.
Mm-hmm. He needed some meds, maybe.
He needed some support, or he wasn't doing something correctly. It also is possible that it's connected to like alcoholism or other things that I'll get into one of the big theories later.
Okay.
But when he goes back to Naples for the second time after Sicily, he gets involved in another fight.
Oh my God.
But this time they like instigated the fight with him.
Oh.
And he is very badly disfigured, is what all his friends say.
Oh.
Like the fight really, really injures him. But in the meantime, he got word from important friends in Rome that they were like, oh, we got you the pardon from the Pope. You can come back. Caravaggio could finally return. That's where he wanted to be, right? That is the center of art and culture at this time. Mm-hmm. So he loads all of his belongings onto a ship, but for some unknown reason, it's never identified. He gets arrested and has to like bribe his way out of jail, and so the ship leaves without him. And all of his possessions are still on the ship.
Great.
So he's going along the coast. I think he's seeking passage for another ship. And he falls ill, and within a few days, he dies.
Oh my gosh.
At the age of 36.
Oh.
So young. The cause of his death was a matter of historical debate for a long time, with theories including malaria and lead poisoning, which would account for his erratic behavior.
Right.
Lead poisoning definitely would account for it, but it might not be just lead poisoning. You know what I mean? Like, it could be lead poisoning plus alcohol abuse, plus a history of trauma, plus no one teaching you how to regulate your temper. Mm-hmm. It sounds like he was dealing with a lot. And then, of course, there was the theory that it was the Tomassoni family that actually had him murdered. And this was just a big debate for a really long time until about the early 2000s. His remains were identified by scientists. I don't know what kind of scientists these were.
Forensic anthropologists?
So I just put scientists with little stars around it.
Okay.
Because I don't know what kind.
Fair enough.
Weirdos, if you know what kind of scientists, let us know. So they did studies that, confirmed that, okay, this dude's Caravaggio, cool.
It's cool.
And they confirmed that he died as the result of a wound sustained in that fight in Naples.
Oh.
When someone else instigated the fight, he got hurt, he was really disfigured. That wound led to sepsis. He went into septic shock, his organs failed, he died. He died very sadly alone. He was all on his own at this time. And then later, Vatican documents released in 2002.
Oh my gosh.
It's always so nice when the Vatican releases some documents.
The Vatican's more secretive than like the U.S. federal government
yes.
when it comes to like freedom of information.
And I don't know why they decided to release this, but they released several documents, I'm assuming letters and things like that, that confirmed that the Tomassoni family had hunted him down and to kill him, and that's what the duel was in Naples. But he fought back. He didn't die in the duel. He died.
Oh, so I guess
later.
Both of those theories were kind of right.
Yeah, exactly. So though his career was obviously short, he left a significant legacy behind with his contributions to the Baroque movement, and then after his death, there were sub-movements in the next generation of painters who are known as the Caravaggisti, essentially
like the followers of
Caravaggio. The followers of Caravaggio started popping up all over, and people wanted to emulate this very unique style, and it just influenced the way we look at art in general, right?
It's amazing.
Caravaggio's epitaph was composed by his friend Marzio Milesi, and one beautiful line from it I wanted to share with you all. It reads, Michelangelo Merisi, son of Fermo di Caravaggio, of Caravaggio, in painting, not equal to a painter, but to nature itself.
Oh my God.
I agree, because I feel like that was his thing, right? Like, I want to paint things as they are. I want to make it as lifelike as possible. I want people to feel like they can touch these subjects.
Yeah.
And that is the life and legacy of artist and troublemaker Caravaggio.
Oh, you know what? That was beautiful. Beautifully said. I love that.
You're so sweet. Thank you. And then let me share really quickly my sources were the BBC, aboutfamousartists.com.
Oh, that's a cool site.
Yeah. thenationalgallery.org. That was the information that I got from the curator of the Caravaggio exhibit there. Caravaggio.net and Wikipedia.
Yay!
Yeah, so that was a lot. There was so much more, but I didn't want to wander in too many directions. Mm-hmm. So I really just wanted to focus on some of the things we already knew, as well as dive deep into like why he is so cool and kind of chaotic at the same time.
I mean, I didn't understand the context of how chaotic he was as a human.
Yeah, I mean, like, picture, like, I don't know, like a famous artist who just like is very publicly known, who goes around like carrying a firearm that would not be cool, and like starting fights with people and throwing artichokes. And
sounds like a rock star from the 1980s.
Yes.
Like Motley Crue or something. Yeah.
He's kind of a punk rocker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that too.
And then, he wrote such great verses that people literally are like crying about it. Like, Caravaggio was mean to me.
He was so mean. It's amazing.
Yeah. So I liked learning more about him. I have a really big Taschen book on him. If folks like those Taschen books, they're beautiful. They make a big one and they make a little one. Mm-hmm. And it's just gorgeous. And I feel like the Taschen books really do the paintings justice.
Yeah, they do. Like very high resolution pictures.
Yes. They look gorgeous. It's almost like seeing them in person, to be honest, since I've seen them in person and in the book. So I recommend checking those out if anyone is also a big Caravaggio fan. Yeah,
you know what? And you have like made me a huge Caravaggio fan. I mean, even after this episode, I think I'm even more of a Caravaggio fan now. You know what's funny too is that like he painted people in like the way they are, and that was like a very Roman way of painting.
Really?
Yeah, or I'm sorry, not a painting, of sculpture. We don't really
sculpting?
have. Yeah, we only have like mosaics. Those are the things that are really left.
Frescoes.
Or frescoes. Yeah. But from sculptors, especially like in the the 2nd century BC, like Roman sculpting was very about like making things lifelike and real, whereas like the Hellenized or like the Hellenistic art, especially sculpture, was like idealized.
Yeah, you can see that a little bit. Yeah, and it's very like less distinct, I guess. Mm-hmm. Whereas with Roman sculpture, you could tell like, oh, this is this person.
Right.
This is that person.
Yeah,
oh, this person had a funny mole.
They have wrinkles.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like everything is just raw.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's really cool. Well, thank you all so much for listening to another episode. We're happy to be back. Andrew will regale us with an interesting tale next week.
Yeah, I already have it picked out, and no surprises here. It's about ancient Rome.
No surprises here, but we did just come back from Rome, so hence the inspiration. And then we'll get back to non-Rome and other content as well.
Yes.
But in the meantime, as always, please, share this podcast with anyone. What are the other things, babe?
You can follow us on History for Weirdos on Instagram. But guys, we are almost to 3,000 followers.
Oh, yeah.
So first of all,
cool.
thank you. And second of all, let's
get there.
Let's get there. Yeah, we're so close. So if you haven't followed us, follow us. And you can also email us at historyforweirdos@gmail.com.
Yes, and then wherever you listen to podcasts, if you leave like a rating, it helps other folks find the podcast as well.
Exactly.
Makes us look good.
Well, until next time, weirdos.
Until next time, weirdos. Thank you so much.
Adios.
We have to cut this out.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
That was
terrible.
That was embarrassing for people with a history podcast.
Yeah.
Okay.
We all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once, and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.
Nice buns, soft, fluffy, and ultra-low net carbs. Discover Hero Bread, the delicious ultra-low net carb bread with incredible taste and texture. Hero Bread has 0 grams of sugar and is under 100 calories per serving. Plus, high in fiber with 5 to 10 grams of protein per serving. Available on Amazon.com, Walmart.com, and at hero.co. That's HERO.co. Delicious, ultra-low net carb Hero Bread, buns and tortillas. Soft and fluffy, high in fiber, and with 0 grams of sugar. Up to 10 grams of protein, coming in at under 100 calories. Order today at hero.co and use the code AH10 to get 10% off your first purchase. That's AH10 at hero.co. HERO.co. Order from hero.co now and get 10% off your first purchase with promo code AH10. That's 10% off with code AH10. HERO.co.